This is your math video for Math 6 for Monday, April 20th, and it's lesson 116 as we start a new chapter. And this chapter is actually the metric system. So if you'll turn to page 280, we'll go over that chart and get you started. The metric system of measurement is based on the number 10. Metric units increase or decrease by powers of 10. This makes the metric system easy to use. Okay, so if you look at the units up at the top of your chart there, you have kilo, which means 1,000. You have hecto, which means 100. Deca, which means 10. And then you have your 1 unit. Okay, and then moving the other direction in the decimal system, in the place value system, you have deci, centi, and milli. Notice that the decimals have an I at the end, okay? So we can measure things in different ways. The first way we can measure something is linear. So that's just a line. When we're measuring, like if I wanted to see how long this board was, it's linear. I'm just measuring the length, okay? When we measure capacity, we want to know, well, how much does it hold? So here's my coffee cup this morning, and I want to know what capacity of coffee will go in my cup. Okay, and then we have mass, and I want to know how heavy something is. So we use these measurements for weight and for capacity and for linear measurements. Okay, so we use a meter as our standard meter for when we measure linear, the length of something. So we have a meter, a decimeter, a centimeter, which you will probably recognize off of your ruler, and a millimeter, which you might recognize off of your ruler as well. A decameter, a hectometer, and a kilometer. You've probably heard of kilometer, similar to a mile, not quite the same measurement, but it gives you an idea that if a meter is this big, a kilometer is 1,000 of those, right? And if a meter is this big, and we break it into tens, the 10 sections, then a decimeter is probably like this, and then we break that section into hundreds, and then we have the centimeter, and then the millimeter gets even smaller. So you can see how we use those measurements. Capacity, we use a liter to measure. So we have a liter, a decaliter, a hectoliter, and a kiloliter, a deciliter, a centiliter, and a milliliter. Okay, in mass, we use the gram for measurement, a decagram, hectogram, kilogram, decigram, centigram, and a milligram. Okay, so if we're just talking about the measurements, down below you'll see we talk about centimeters, we measure length, we measure that linear length. Okay, what about square centimeters? So remember when we find area, right? So this we would measure with a centimeter ruler, and we could say, well, this is how 6 centimeters or whatever we say the measurement is. But when we want to know how much is on the inside, we have to break it into squares, 1 centimeter squares. So my answer might be 32 centimeters squared, or square centimeters. Then if we want to measure the volume of a cube, now we have a 3-dimensional object here. Okay, and I want to know how many can fill this up. Well, I can't use flat squares, can't I? So I'm going to take my centimeter measurement, and I'm going to build 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter cubed. Okay, so I take that little box and I put it inside, and I want to see, well, how many of these little cubes is it going to take, to fill this up? Okay, so now I'm talking about how many cubes to fill it up. So if I'm measuring volume, I might say, well, it's going to take me 62 centimeters cubed. That means cubed centimeters. Each little cube measures 1 by 1 by 1 centimeter. Okay, so centimeters cubed. So linear, area, and volume. Okay, so would the area of your desktop be 228 centimeters, 228 centimeters squared, or 228 centimeters cubed? I hope you're thinking 228 centimeters squared because your desktop is a flat surface, a lot like my board, and we would measure it with the flat squares, so we would be finding the area and it would be measured in squares. Okay? So turn over to your practice. You're going to be answering basic questions about that chart that we went over today. If you have any questions, let me know, but get familiar with it because we'll be using it more and more and more as we go through this chapter. All right, so let's do numbers 1 through 25.